The bin is evidence, Freya thinks, and she has not emptied it. She stands in the center of Evander Voss's private office on the 31st floor of the Voss Holdings building at 11:47 on a Tuesday night, and she knows she should have emptied that particular wastebasket 20 minutes ago. She knows it the way she knows most things that matter, quietly, at the back of her skull, in the place where numbers live alongside warnings. The wastebasket sits beside the left edge of his desk, and inside it, beneath a torn-open envelope and the ghost of a coffee ring on a sheet of cream paper, there is a receipt. A number on that receipt does not belong. She recognized it the way a person who has spent 12 years looking at financial architecture recognizes a load-bearing wall that has been quietly removed, the shape of absence, the structural wrongness of a column that should hold weight but doesn't. $47,000. A vendor code she has cross-referenced twice now against the building's contractor log in her head without moving an inch, because her memory for strings of digits is the only extraordinary thing about her, and she learned long ago not to be proud of it out loud. She is not supposed to be reading the contents of the wastebasket. Her job description is precise on this point. She is a night cleaner. She empties the bins. She does not read what is in them. She wipes the surfaces and replaces the liners, and moves on, and is invisible, and that is, in every practical sense, exactly what she prefers. Freya Calloway is 28 years old and 5'4", and round in every possible direction, soft and heavy and full in ways that shapeless charcoal scrubs and a hooded zip-up the color of wet concrete have concealed successfully for the 3 months she has worked this floor. She has perfected the art of occupying space without triggering notice. She moves through rooms like weather, present, unremarkable, gone. She should empty the bin and go. She does not empty the bin. Instead, her thick fingers, she has always thought of them as thick, though they are precise as a surgeon's when they need to be, reach into the wastebasket and retrieve the receipt. She photographs it with her phone. Then she folds it and places it in the kangaroo pocket of her zip-up, against her stomach, pressed between the fabric and the soft, warm weight of her body. And she picks up her cart and she leaves. She does not sleep that night. The numbers do not let her. The Voss Holdings building runs 24 floors of legitimate property development and 7 floors of something else, though Freya does not know that yet. What she knows is that the cleaning service assigns her floors 28 through 31, that she works alone from 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. 4 nights a week, and that she has never in 3 months of service seen Evander Voss in his office at any hour when she was present. She has seen the evidence of him. She has seen the single glass, always one, always clean, always repositioned exactly 3 inches from the right edge of the desk blotter, so precisely that she suspected at first it was a test. She has breathed the air of his office, which holds the memory of cedarwood and something colder underneath, something mineral and exacting, and she has learned from the wastebasket what he reads, and from the desk arrangement what kind of mind he possesses, and from the single glass that he does not share his space. In 3 months, she has built a precise portrait of a man she has never seen. She does not know that he has seen her. She does not know that he has seen her every night for 11 weeks, via the security feed on the secondary monitor in his secondary office on the 29th floor, where he works after midnight when the building believes him gone. She does not know that he watched her replace the liner in his wastebasket with the same focused deliberateness with which she does everything, her broad shoulders squared, her thick dark hair pulled back under the hood so that only the curve of her cheek is visible, soft and undefended, and that something in him went very still the first time he watched it, and has not moved since. She does not know any of this. She knows only the receipt and the number and the absence that should not be there, and the fact that she is going to have to do something about it, even though doing something about it means becoming visible, and becoming visible is the thing she fears most in the world. The vendor code on the receipt traces, across 3 days of Freya's off-hours research, to a shell company registered in Delaware with a filing date of 6 weeks prior. The shell company shares a registered agent with 2 other entities that Freya finds by following the public record in the way that only someone who thinks in financial structures can follow it, laterally, through negative space, through what the filing does not say, rather than what it does. One of the 2 related entities has a director whose name appears in a separate context in a local business gazette from 14 months ago, photographed at a Voss Holdings ribbon-cutting ceremony standing 4 people to the left of the building's head of vendor relations. His name is Gerald Pruitt. He has a county tax lien from 8 years back, resolved. He has a shell company, and the shell company has a Voss Holdings vendor code, and the vendor code has received in the past 4 billing cycles a total of $211,000 for services Freya cannot find any record of in any capacity. She sits at her kitchen table at 2 in the morning with a legal pad covered in her small, cramped handwriting and a cold cup of tea, and she thinks about the fact that she found this in a wastebasket because nobody thought the night cleaner would read what she was meant to be throwing away. The irony of it has the particular flavor of her life. She is useful precisely because she is overlooked. She solves problems that nobody knew existed because nobody looked at her long enough to wonder whether she might be looking back. She tells herself she will call the building's HR tip line in the morning and leave an anonymous message. She calls no one. On Thursday night she goes to work and she cleans floors 28 through 30, and when she reaches 31 she finds that Evander Voss's office door, which is always closed but unlocked for cleaning per the service protocol, is tonight closed and locked. The light under the door is on. She stands in the corridor with her cart and her heart doing something unsteady, and she tells herself she will skip the room and loop back later. She is looping back at 2:15. When the door opens. He is taller than the portrait she has built of him. This is the first thought, and it is followed immediately by a cascade of secondary thoughts that she does not have time to process because he is standing in the doorway and she is standing in the corridor, and there is no version of this in which she is invisible, not with the cart between them and the fluorescent overhead washing everything in the kind of light that hides nothing. He wears a suit the color of deep water at night, charcoal so dark it reads as black except at the edges, and the jacket is still buttoned, though it is after 2 in the morning, and his eyes, which are dark enough that she cannot determine in this light whether they are brown or black or some color that exists only in the language of obsidian, settle on her with a steadiness that makes her feel the specific way she hates to feel, seen. "You're the night cleaner," he says. It is not a question. His voice occupies the lower registers of human hearing in a way that she feels in her sternum more than she hears with her ears, a resonance that seems disproportionate to the volume, which is barely above conversational. "Yes," Freya says, "I can come back. You've been on this floor for 3 months." She is not sure whether this is an accusation. "That's right." He looks at her for a moment. Not the way men usually look at her, which is either through her or past her or occasionally with a particular dismissive assessment that she has learned to preempt by making herself smaller, but with the focused attention of someone cataloging something they find significant. His gaze does not travel. It simply lands on her face and stays. "Your name," he says. "Freya Calloway." He says nothing. He steps back from the doorway in a way that is not an invitation, and is also not an invitation. She does not move. He turns toward his desk, and the door remains open, and after a moment, she pushes her cart to the threshold because the wastebasket needs to be emptied. That is her job. That is what she is here to do, and she will do it, and she will leave. She enters the office. She does not look at the wastebasket immediately. She looks at him, because he is at his desk and he is watching her in the way that she might watch an equation she has not yet solved, and the room smells of cedarwood and that cold mineral thing that she now knows is not cologne but is simply him, some quality of the air where he stands, and she pulls the liner from the wastebasket with practiced efficiency. "You don't talk," he says from the desk. "It's not required for the job," she says. A pause. If he smiles, she cannot see it. "No," he says, "it isn't." She replaces the liner. She straightens. She is acutely aware of herself in this room, her wide hips, the heavy fall of her thighs and the shapeless scrub trousers, the way her zip-up sits across her shoulders and chest, all of it designed to be as unremarkable as possible, which has never felt more insufficient than in this particular 60 seconds. "Calloway," he says. She pauses at the door. "Empty the bins, say nothing." She looks at him. "And come back tomorrow night," he says. The voice drops, not a great deal, but enough. "I have a project." She does not know what that means. She does not ask. She nods and leaves, and in the elevator going down, she holds the closed bag of his office waste against her hip and thinks about the receipt that is still folded in her kitchen drawer at home, and about the $211,000, and about the way his eyes stayed on her face when every available social convention suggested they should have gone elsewhere. She does not know what to do with any of it. She is very good at knowing what to do with most things. It is an unusual and uncomfortable sensation, not knowing, and she sits with it the whole ride down and the whole ride home on the night bus, where she takes up a seat and a half and folds her hands in her lap and stares at her own reflection in the dark window and does not look away. She goes back the next night. She tells herself, this is purely professional. She tells herself a lot of things on the bus ride in, most of them to do with the receipt and Gerald Pruitt's shell company, and the responsible thing to do when a person discovers financial misconduct inside a building they clean for minimum wage, plus a $1.15 hazard differential. She tells herself that what she has is not her business and not her problem, and that visibility has never once in her 28 years served her in any way that mattered. The office door is open when she arrives. He is there. He is standing at the floor-to-ceiling window that faces the river, and the skyline does something to the dark of his suit, halos it faintly silver at the edges, and for a moment she stops the cart in the doorway and simply looks at him, which she immediately corrects. She pushes the cart in. She goes to the wastebasket. "Close the door," he says without turning. She closes it. "Come here." She is not, strictly speaking, obligated to obey him. She is not his employee. She works for the contracted cleaning service. She is also aware that this is a distinction with very little practical weight. She crosses the room to where he stands and she stops beside the desk, not at the window, because going to the window would be a choice she has not made yet, and the desk is a reasonable intermediate position, and she waits. He turns. In full light, the warm amber of the single desk lamp, he is different. Not more approachable. Something else. There are angles to his jaw and cheekbones that the corridor fluorescence flattened yesterday, and his eyes in this light are very dark brown, not quite black, and he is looking at her with that same cataloging quality, except that now she can see that it is not assessment in the way she fears. It is something more like a person who has already decided and is simply confirming. He sets a folder on the desk. He turns it to face her. He does not open it. "I've had 3 forensic accountants look at a discrepancy in my vendor accounts," he says. "They couldn't find the origin." Freya's hands are clasped in front of her stomach, pressing into the soft give of herself through the zip-up. She does not reach for the folder. "I don't understand why you're telling me this," she says. "Because the file they couldn't crack contained a vendor code," he says. "And that vendor code disappeared from the wastebasket in my office 2 weeks ago." The silence that follows is the specific, dense kind that happens when 2 people are in possession of the same secret, and both know it. Freya breathes through it. The receipt, folded in her kitchen drawer at home, seems suddenly very far away and very much still in existence, which is the problem with evidence. It persists. "I photograph everything I find," she says. Her voice is steady. She is good at steady when things get sharp. "It's in my phone's cloud backup, automatically. If anything happened to me, it would still exist." This is not entirely accurate. The cloud backup is manual, and she has not, in fact, enabled automatic sync on her phone since the update 18 months ago that she kept meaning to fix. But she says it with such complete conviction that she almost believes it herself, and she watches his face for the reaction that would tell her she has made a catastrophic error, and what she sees instead is something that might, on a different man, be the beginning of something that feels like approval. "Smart," he says. "I'm always careful," she says. "I know." He opens the folder. Inside are printed spreadsheets, columns of figures, the familiar architecture of a ledger. "Tell me what you see." She looks at the spreadsheets. She does not touch them. From 3 feet away, her eyes move across the columns with the fluid efficiency of someone reading in their native language, and she sees within 40 seconds what 3 forensic accountants apparently did not see, which is that the skimming is not coming from the vendor account itself, but from the rounding mechanism of the expense reconciliation system, fractions of cents accumulated across 40,000 transactions per quarter, a method so old and so boring that apparently no one looks for it anymore. Gerald Pruitt found a very old key to a very old door. "Your expense reconciliation rounds to 2 decimal places," she says. "The system is bleeding the difference into a catch-all account. The vendor invoices are clean. The fraud is in the rounding." Evander Voss is very still. She looks up from the spreadsheets and finds him watching her with an expression she cannot name, which is unusual because she is generally very good at naming what she finds on faces. His large hands rest on the edge of the desk, and he is very close to her side of it now, though she did not register him moving. "The rounding," he says. "The salami technique," she says. "It's textbook. It's just been done across enough transactions and enough time that the annual loss is significant. 211,000 if my mental arithmetic is right, and it usually is." He looks at her for a long moment. The cedarwood warmth of him is closer than it was. His hands on the desk edge are bare, no gloves, no rings, and she notices the detail without intending to. "Freya Calloway," he says, in a different register than before. The bottom of the baritone, where it gets quiet and certain. "Who are you?" It is not a question. She can tell the difference. "The night cleaner," she says. He says nothing to that. His eyes move, and this time they do travel. Not aggressively, not with the inventory quality she has endured from other men at other times, but deliberately, the way a person touches something they intend to keep, from her face down and then back up, and she is aware of herself again, the soft, full weight of herself, and she makes the reflexive calculation she always makes. Too much, too wide, too round, too present. This man, who is precise and angular and expensive, is standing in a room with someone who has spent 3 months perfecting invisibility, and he is looking at her as though he can see exactly who she is and finds it, specifically and personally, worth looking at. It is the most terrifying thing she has experienced in recent memory, and she has just admitted to removing evidence from a crime scene to a man she suspects runs something considerably more complex than a property development firm. "You should go home," he says. "Come back Monday. Use the staff entrance on the east side. There will be a badge waiting." "I already have a badge." "A different badge," he says. "A better one." She leaves the office. She is halfway to the elevator when she hears him behind her, not following, not close, just his voice through the open door, level and quiet. "Freya." She stops. "The receipt. Keep it somewhere safe." She does not turn around. "I already said that," she says, to the elevator doors. "I know," he says. I'm saying it back. Gerald Pruitt is discovered on a Wednesday, which Freya learns not from Evander directly but from the building's East Wing staff, who speak freely in the corridors in the way that people always do near whoever is responsible for cleaning up after them. She has a new badge. She has, since Monday, been assigned exclusively to the 31st floor and to a small adjacent office that has been cleared for her use, containing a desk, 2 monitors, access to the building's financial server, and a chair that she noted immediately was rated for £400, which means someone selected it on purpose, which means Evander Voss selected it on purpose, and this particular detail lodged in her chest like a small warm splinter that she has not been able to dislodge since. She has also, since Monday, been required to attend the 9 a.m. financial review meeting on 31 because Evander told her to, and because the badge opens the door, and because she has found, in 4 days of server access, 3 additional instances of expense manipulation that she has not yet finished decumptoring. She attends these meetings in her shapeless scrubs because she does not own anything else that she wears to work, and because it has not until this moment struck her that this might be a problem. It becomes a problem on the Friday. The meeting runs the same as Tuesdays and Wednesdays, 8 people around a long table, Evander at the head, his second-in-command Rook to his right. A rotation of department heads who all have the wary quality of people who understand that the consequences of disappointing the man at the head of the table are not standard corporate consequences. Freya sits at the far end, which she chose, with her legal pad and her laptop, and the same faded gray zip-up she has worn every day this week. She is presenting her third finding, the depreciation schedule anomaly, in the Eastern Properties portfolio, when the door opens and Mara Vance enters, head of investor relations, thin in the specifically architectural way of women who have built thinness into their professional identity, cream blazer, silk shell, the kind of composure that requires a great deal of maintenance and knows it. She takes the empty chair nearest the door and crosses her legs and looks down the table at Freya in the specific way that Freya has been looked at by women like Mara Vance her entire life, which is to say with a thorough assessment that arrives at its conclusion before the subject has finished existing. Freya finishes her sentence. She turns her laptop to show the depreciation table. The pattern here suggests the undervaluation is intentional and coordinated across. Sorry, Mara Vance says. Not sorry. Are we letting the cleaning staff present in financial meetings now? The room goes the particular kind of quiet that happens when something has been dropped from a height. Freya's hands are still on her laptop. She does not remove them. Because, Mara continues, with the lightness of someone who believes they have the room, I only ask because I've seen her with the cart, and I just want to make sure I'm in the right meeting. Freya's jaw tightens. She has felt this before. The specific, practiced cruelty of being reduced to a function while you are in the middle of a thought. She knows what happens next. She will deflect or minimize or make herself smaller by some increment, and the meeting will continue, and by tomorrow she will be back to being something that people step around in corridors. What happens instead is that the temperature in the room changes. It is subtle enough that she cannot identify exactly what causes it. Evander Voss does not raise his voice. He does not move quickly. What he does is set down his pen, a precise, deliberate placement against the table, and turn his head toward Mara Vance at a pace that makes the gesture feel architectural, structural, the adjustment of something load-bearing. Her name, he says in the conversational baritone that Freya has begun to understand carries more threat the quieter it gets, is Freya Calloway. She has a master's degree in forensic accounting from the University of Edinburgh. She found the fraud that cost this company over $200,000 in 4 months. Your division's forensic auditors found nothing in 6. Mara Vance is very still. Apologize, he says. Not ask, not suggest. A single-word instruction with the texture of something that will not be repeated. Mara opens her mouth, closes it, says, in a voice scraped nearly flat, "I apologize." Freya looks at her legal pad. Her heart is conducting itself in an undignified way against her ribs. She waits until she is certain her own voice will be steady before she speaks. "The depreciation anomaly," she says, "appears across 7 properties and totals approximately 83,000 in misreported loss deductions." She turns the laptop back to its previous angle. "I'd like to walk through the asset IDs." Evander picks up his pen. "Continue," he says. After the meeting, Freya sits in her small adjacent office, with the door closed and her hands flat on the desk, and she breathes. The room is warm and quiet and smells faintly of new carpet, and she is still in her gray zip-up, and the weight of what just happened in that boardroom is settling over her the way weight settles, slowly, with gravity's particular patience. A master's degree from the University of Edinburgh. He knew before he found the vendor code in the wastebasket, before the folder on the desk, before Monday's badge. He had looked at her. He had seen who she was beneath the shapeless gray. She does not know how. She does not know what this means. She knows that she is still wearing the same faded zip-up she has worn every day this week, and that Mara Vance had to apologize to her in front of 8 people, and that Evander Voss called her by her full name in the tone he uses for things he has already decided. There is a knock. She knows the knock. 2 knuckles, unhurried, waiting. "Come in," she says. He enters and closes the door, and he does something she has not seen him do in any meeting or corridor. He crosses to her side of the desk, not his side, and sits in the chair against the wall, which places him lower than the standing height of the desk, which places him, given his height, approximately level with where she sits. She notices this. She cannot tell if it is intentional. She suspects it is always intentional. "You have your degree documented," he says. "It's in my employment file with the cleaning service," she says, "which nobody reads." "I read it." "When?" "Before I left the vendor code folder on the desk." The word "before" sits in the air between them like a coordinate. She looks at him. He is watching her with that quality she has given up trying to name, the one that began in the corridor 11 days ago and has not changed register since. She is acutely aware of the desk between them and of the fact that there is very little of it. "Why didn't you just hire me through normal channels?" she says. "I needed to know if you'd keep the receipt," he says. Someone who keeps something they were told not to, for reasons they could articulate if pressed, has a kind of moral architecture I find useful. "And if I'd just emptied the bin? Then we wouldn't be here." She absorbs this. The lamp on her desk is warm amber, the same quality as his office light, and she wonders if that is also intentional, if he instructed someone to select the same bulb, if the small warm shelter of this office was built with some degree of deliberateness that she is only now, sitting inside it, beginning to understand. "There's more than the vendor fraud," she says. He waits. "The rounding mechanism was placed by someone who has access to the system architecture. Pruitt couldn't have done it alone. He doesn't have the technical background. Someone opened the door for him." She keeps her hands on the desk. "And that person is still inside the building." A pause. "You're certain?" "The depreciation anomaly uses the same fingerprint," she says. "A slightly non-standard decimal place in the formula. It's the same hand. Different account, same technique, different person executing but the same authoring logic. Pruitt was the front end. Whoever built the mechanism is still here." Evander Voss sits forward. The shift in his posture is small, an inch, perhaps 2, but she feels it the way you feel a change in air pressure. "Name," he says. "I don't have one yet. I need 3 more days in the archive system." "You have them." He stands. He is very tall in her small office in a way that is She does not have a word that isn't dangerous. He looks at her, and the lamp makes things of his face that the corridor fluorescents do not, and she is very aware of herself sitting, round and soft and wide, in a chair that was chosen for her specifically. 3 days, Freya, whatever you need. I need a different password tier for the archive server, she says. Done. And I need you to not tell anyone I'm looking. He looks at her for a moment longer than the reply requires. No one in this building, he says, knows what you are. She does not know how to hold that sentence. She turns to her laptop instead. 3 days, she says. He leaves. The door closes. The room is warm and amber and very quiet, and Freya Calloway sits in it and feels, for perhaps the first time in a long time, like the subject of the sentence she is living, rather than its object. She does not trust the feeling yet. She turns to the archive system, and she begins to work. The name Freya surfaces on the 3rd day is Dominic Ruel, who is not technically an employee of Voss Holdings but serves as the firm's contracted IT infrastructure lead, which gives him access to the system architecture that Gerald Pruitt lacked. Ruel has been billing the firm for 23 months. He has, in that period, built a mechanism so elegant that Freya genuinely pauses to appreciate it before she documents everything it has done. The decimal place method is his. The non-standard rounding formula is his. Pruitt was a distribution point. Ruel is the source. And Ruel, Freya discovers in the final hour of her 3 days, has a relationship with a competing property firm that explains the motivation in terms more coherent than simple greed. He was feeding competitor intelligence through the shell account infrastructure, the money a secondary benefit to the access. She has everything in a file. She has backups in 3 locations, all of them real this time, all automatic. She brings the file to Evander's office at 11 p.m. on a Thursday, because she is working nights again now by preference. The building is quiet and the thinking is easier, and the fluorescents on 31 are not as harsh as the ones on the floors below. He is at his desk. He looks up when she enters, which he does not always do when other people enter, and she notes this and files it in the same place she files the chair and the lamp and the badge and the name said in the corridor. She sets the file on the desk. Dominic Ruel, she says. He opens the file. He reads it, not skimming, actually reading, in the way of a person who understands what they are looking at. And the room is very quiet, and she stands on the far side of his desk, in her gray zip-up and her scrub trousers, and she waits. When he finishes, he closes the file and sets it down and looks at her, and something in his face is different, not open. She does not think his face is built for open in the conventional sense, but resolved, like a calculation completed. Ruel will be handled, he says. She knows what handled means in this building, in the same way she knows what the blank vendor codes mean, and what Rook's job title actually covers, and what the secondary offices on 29 are actually used for. She has had 3 weeks to understand the architecture of Voss Holdings, in both its dimensions, and she is not naive and she never has been. I don't need to know the details, she says. No, he says, you don't. She nods. She turns to go. Freya. She stops. She does not turn immediately. She has been trying very hard for 3 weeks to be competent and invisible in equal measure, which she recognizes as a contradiction and has not yet resolved. Turn around, he says, not harsh, not impatient, the quiet bottom register. She turns. He has come around the desk. He is standing closer to her side of the room than his own, which she has begun to recognize as a pattern. He is in his black suit, and his arms are at his sides, and his hands are bare, and he is looking at her in the amber light with the expression she gave up naming, and she is aware, acutely, that she is standing in the center of his office in faded gray shapelessness at 11 p.m., and that this is a moment of some kind. She can feel it the way she feels structural problems in ledgers, the shape of something that is about to change. You've been here 3 weeks, he says. Yes. You've found fraud, identified a secondary operative, documented everything, secured backups, and presented findings under direct personal humiliation without losing composure. She does not know what to say to this. And you still think, he says, his voice dropping, that you need to make yourself smaller in this building. I don't, she starts. Every time you walk into a room, he says, you pull that hood forward. Every time someone looks at you, you look at your legal pad. When Mara Vance said what she said, your first move was to make yourself quiet. My first move was to continue my presentation, she says, with a precision that surprises even her. Something in his face moves. Yes, he says, it was. He reaches out. He takes the edge of her zip-up hood between 2 fingers, just the edge, just that, and he pushes it back from her face. She holds very still. Her hair comes with it, the dark mass of it falling loose from where she'd tucked it under the hood, and the amber light catches it, and she resists the overwhelming urge to gather it back, to reconceal, to recalibrate the boundary of herself back to the dimensions she controls. He looks at her, not at the room, at her. You are not invisible, he says. You have never been invisible to me. Her throat is doing something she does not have language for. Since the first night, he says, since before I put the folder on the desk, you were the most present person in every room you walked through, and you spent all of your energy trying not to be. And I watched it every night for 11 weeks, and He stops. He does not, she understands, stop because he doesn't know the rest. He stops because he is choosing how to say it. I found it, he says finally, unbearable to watch. The hiding, she says. You, he says, deciding you were worth less than you are. Her hands are at her sides. She is round and full and heavy and 5'4" in the center of his enormous office, and he is standing in front of her looking at her the way he looks at things he has decided to keep, and she understands suddenly, with the clarity that only comes when a long equation finally resolves, that he has always known who she was and has been waiting, with the patience of someone who is very good at waiting, for her to know it too. Evander, she says. The name feels different in her mouth than she expected. He says. I kept the receipt, she says. I know. I was going to turn it over anonymously. I know that too. I didn't, she says. No, he says. You kept it. You stayed. You're still here. He does not move toward her, and he does not need to, because something has already changed in the geometry of the room, the way weight redistributes when a structure settles into its true shape. She looks at him. He looks at her. The lamp between them is amber and warm, and the window behind him holds the river and the lights of the city. And for the first time in 28 years, Freya Calloway is standing in a room in her own body, without calculating how much of it to conceal. And the extraordinary thing, she thinks, the thing she will return to when she needs a number she can believe in, is that she is not hidden and she is not less. She is the subject. She is exactly here. You're not going back to the cleaning contract, he says. I know, she says. And you're going to need a wardrobe that is not a gray zip-up. That, she says, seems excessive. You've been told, he says, with the flat certainty of someone issuing a business order, that you take up too much space your entire life. She does not deny it. You take up exactly the right amount, he says, in the voice that has no question in it. And I would like, the slight roughening, the place where the baritone gets close and quiet, to make sure you know that every time you're in a room for the rest of your life, she breathes, the room breathes. That's a significant commitment, she says. Yes, he says. You should know I have very precise standards for financial documentation. I'm aware, and I'm not going to stop telling you when something is structurally wrong just because you're the one who built it. His eyes, which are dark brown in this light and hold in them something deep and certain and warm in the way amber is warm, do not look away. That, he says, is exactly why you're here. She takes one step toward the center of the room, which is also one step toward him, which is a choice she makes with both feet, the full weight of herself, unapologetically present, and Evander Voss stands in front of her and does not move back even 1 inch, which is, she thinks, all the answer she needs. If this story landed in your chest the way it landed in ours, do us a favor. Tap the like button and leave a comment below. Tell us what moment hit you hardest. Share this with someone who needs to hear that being seen is not a risk, it is a right. Subscribe so you never miss a story from the Cold Hearts Library, because we have more of them, darker, warmer, sharper, and every single one of them belongs to you.